The carriage stopped at the gates of Marchwood Hall just past the 6th hour of evening, and the woman inside was told, without ceremony, that she was no longer her own. Vesper Aldwin sat very straight on the worn velvet seat, her gloved hands folded over a small leather case. The case held everything she still possessed in the world: a change of linen, a miniature portrait of a mother she had buried at 12, a small comb of carved bone, and folded beneath all of it, the document her uncle had signed 3 nights ago in a candle-yellow study that had stunk of brandy and resentment. She was 23 years of age, of sound education and presentable manner, surrendered to the household of His Grace, the Duke of Rivenholt, in full and final settlement of debts, amounting to £4,700. She had read the document once, and never again. The carriage door opened. A footman in dark green livery offered his hand, without looking at her face. Vesper stepped down onto gravel that crunched beneath her boots, like the breaking of small bones, and lifted her eyes to the house. Marchwood Hall rose against the dusk, like a fortress that had once been beautiful. Pale stone, 4 stories, 2 long wings, windows narrow as judgment. The setting sun caught the highest panes and turned them to copper. The place looked, she thought, exactly like what it was: a man's grief built into walls. She was led inside through a side entrance, not the great front doors. The housekeeper who received her was tall and narrow, perhaps 60, with iron-colored hair drawn into a severe knot, and a face that had decided long ago to expect disappointment. "Mrs. Penhallow," the housekeeper said briskly. "Miss Aldwin," her voice held. She was proud of that. "You were to wait in the small parlor. His Grace is being informed. He was not expecting you tonight." "I see. You will not see him directly. Lord Calburn is presently with him." Vesper inclined her head as if she understood, although she did not entirely. Lord Calburn. The name meant nothing to her, only that some other man had carried her like unwelcome news through these corridors, and that 2 voices were now deciding what would become of her. She was shown into a small green room with a cold hearth. The door was closed behind her with a soft, final click. Vesper did not sit. She set her case on the floor and walked the length of the room. A landscape on the wall, a clock that had stopped. The room had the look of a place kept ready for unwanted visitors. That was when she heard the voices. They came through the wall behind a sideboard, muffled but distinct. 2 men. The room beyond shared a hearth with this one. Sound traveled along the flue the way water finds a crack. She should have moved away. A lady would have moved away. Vesper stepped closer. "You were not asked," the first voice said. Lower, colder, each consonant placed with the precision of a man cutting paper. "You acted without my consent and without my knowledge, and you brought her into this house as if I were a man who accepts gifts from his enemies." "She is not a gift," the second voice answered. "Older. Smoother. She is a settlement. You have been pursuing Aldwin for the debt these 18 months. He has nothing left but the girl. Take her, and the matter closes. I will not be paid in women, Calborn. You will be paid in what is offered." Silence. You knew what my answer would be. That is why you arranged it without me. I signed as your representative. You signed as a man who believes his judgment is worth more than mine. The girl was going to be sold elsewhere, Tobias. The merchant in Bath had already offered. If you would not take her, she would have gone there. That is not my concern. Then I have failed in raising you. She is a spy. She is a frightened young woman who has lost everyone. She is a spy, the cold voice repeated. Or she is a fool. Or she is the ruin of this estate, hiding behind a clean dress. Aldwin has hated this family for 20 years. He does not surrender his ward to me out of necessity. He surrenders her because he believes she will do, inside this house, what he has failed to do from outside it. You have no proof of that. I have no proof of anything. That is precisely the difficulty. Vesper closed her eyes. She had imagined many things on the journey here. She had imagined a man who would scarcely notice her, into whose household she might disappear and live, head down, until the years were paid out. She had not imagined a man who had already decided she was a weapon before he had ever seen her face. For a moment, the old useful instinct rose in her, the one she had learned at her uncle's table. Be smaller. Be quieter. Survive by becoming nearly invisible. Then something else rose, something she had been carrying in her chest like a hot coal since the night the document was signed. She would not stand in a green room and wait to be discussed like livestock. Not by him. Not by anyone. Ever again. Vesper crossed the parlor, opened the door, and stepped into the corridor. A footman startled at his post. She did not look at him. The corridor curved. A pair of double doors stood half open at the end of it, warm light spilling onto the polished floor. She heard the older voice say, "Gentler now. Tobias? At least look at her before you decide." She does not require my looking. Vesper pushed the doors fully open. Two men turned. The older man stood by the hearth, gray-haired, neat-bearded, dressed in dark blue. He looked at her with the resigned dismay of a man whose plans had once again been reorganized by someone else's nerve. He looked, very briefly, almost amused. The younger man stood behind a great desk of black wood, perhaps 34. Tall in the way of men who used height the way other men used voices, deliberately, as a tool. His coat was perfectly cut and entirely black. His hair was darker still, drawn back from a face built on harder lines than nature usually permitted. His eyes were gray, and they held no welcome. This, she understood without being told, was the Duke of Ravenholt. He looked at her, as one might look at a knife placed upon one's pillow. "I beg your pardon," Vesper said. "I was told to wait in the parlor. I find I am unable to. You were not summoned. I was not. I have come anyway." The older man made a sound that was almost, but not quite a laugh. "Your Grace," Vesper said, "you have been speaking of me through a wall for the last quarter of an hour. You have called me a spy, a fool, and the ruin of your estate. You have decided, without ever having seen my face, what kind of woman I am. I came to spare you the labor of inventing me." The room went still. "You were listening at the wall?" "I was standing in the room I was put in. The wall was good enough to carry your voice. I will not pretend I did not hear what I heard. That is not an apology. It is not, your Grace." For one long beat, she thought he would call for the footman. He did not. "Sit down." She hesitated. He saw it, and his mouth turned at one corner, not in a smile but in something cooler. "Sit down, Miss Aldwyn. If you mean to enter rooms uninvited, the least you can do is be seated when you do it." She sat. Her knees did not shake. She forbade them. The older man stepped forward and inclined his head. "Lord Calbourne, I am, by some misfortune, His Grace's godfather, and the man responsible for your presence here this evening. You have my apology for the manner of your arrival. You have nothing to apologize for, my lord. I was sold by my uncle. You did not invent the transaction." The Duke turned to face her. "Tell me your name in full." "Vesper Margaret Aldwyn. Your father?" "Dead. 12 years. Your mother?" "Dead. The same year. Your uncle is your father's brother. Half-brother, by a second marriage. He came to the household when I was 13. You know who I am. You are the Duke of Ravenholt. You know, more particularly, what I am to your uncle. His enemy of 20 years. A man whose father he ruined. A man whose mother he slandered. That is the man who has sent you to this house. I did not ask to come here, Your Grace. I did not say you did. I said that he sent you. There is a difference. I am aware of it. Are you also aware, Miss Aldwin, that I have no reason in the world to believe a single word you say? I am aware. I would not believe me in your place. I would suspect every word, every silence, and every step. Then we begin an agreement. He came around the desk and stood before her, hands clasped behind his back. I will not send you back tonight. You will be given supper and a room. You will speak to no one of the document by which you came here. You will move through this house tomorrow as a companion to my mother, the Dowager. That will be the only version uttered under this roof. Do I make myself plain? Plainly, Your Grace. And one further understanding, Miss Aldwin. If at any moment, by any sign, I find that you have been sent into this house to do me harm, I will not turn you out with a coach and a reference. I will give you to the law. I will not be merciful. Are we understood? We are. Then welcome to Marchwood Hall. He turned away from her, dismissing her without raising his voice. Calbourne offered her his arm and led her toward the door. At the threshold, she paused. Your Grace. He did not turn. Miss Aldwin, you spoke, behind that wall, of what kind of woman I might be. I will not waste your time with protests. You will not believe them, and I would not in your place. So I will say only this. Whatever I am not what my uncle made me, and I am not what he sent me here to be. The matter will be decided by what I do under this roof, not by what was decided about me in his study. He turned then. He looked at her steadily. Good night, Miss Aldwin. Good night, Your Grace. She walked out with her head up, and only when the door closed did she allow her knees, briefly, to remember they had been frightened. Mrs. Penhallow met her in the corridor. She looked at her face, looked at the door she had just emerged from, and after the smallest pause said, This way, miss. Your room is at the end of the east corridor. Behind her, Calbourne poured 2 glasses of brandy without asking, and placed one in the Duke's hand. The Duke stood at the window for a long while without drinking it. He has sent me a clever one, the Duke said at last, very quietly. God help me. She slept badly and woke before the maids. The room was at the end of the east corridor, 2 flights up from the Duke's study, as far from the family wing as a room could be without being given to a servant. It was clean. The bed was narrow but well made. The fire had been banked low and kindly before retiring. None of it was warm in any sense beyond the literal. She lay in the dark and listened to the house. A clock struck the hour somewhere far off. Wind moved against the panes. She thought of her uncle. He had not betrayed her. To betray, one must first have been trusted. He had simply, at last, used what had always been available. What was new was the other man. The Duke, who had told her, without raising his voice, that if she failed his test, he would not turn her out into a coach, but into the long, patient machinery of the law. She believed him. She also believed, although she could not yet have said why, that he had not wanted to mean it. When the first gray began at the window, she rose, washed in cold water, dressed in the plainer of her 2-day dresses, and braided her hair flat. She did not look at the small glass on the washstand. She knew what she would see. A young woman with too pale a face and a mouth her mother had once said, laughing, was made for being stubborn with. A knock announced Mrs. Penhallow. The household breakfast's at 7. Her Grace the Dowager will receive you at 9:30. Until then, you will accompany me. The tour was an examination. The yellow drawing room, the morning room, the library, walled in books from floor to ceiling, the dining hall, the estate office, where a young, harried-looking man named Mr. Ferncliff was already at work behind a desk, piled with ledgers, who rose at their entrance, bowed precisely, and sat again at Mrs. Penhallow's nod. "His Grace's study," Mrs. Penhallow said, as they passed a closed black door. "You do not enter. Under any circumstance." "Yes. The West Wing is closed. It has been closed for 3 years. The maids do not go there. There is no need for you to go there." A small, deliberate weight had entered the air around the words. "It is clear." Good. By 7:30, a footman came to the breakfast room. "Her Grace will see Miss Aldwyn now." It was an hour and a quarter earlier than the time she had been given. Go. The Dowager's apartments occupied the western corner of the family wing, opening through 3 tall windows onto a long sweep of lawn. The sitting room beyond was warm. A fire burned, and in a high-backed chair beside the hearth sat a small woman of perhaps 65, her hair entirely white, her hands very thin, and her shoulders as straight as a girl's at her first ball. "Come closer, child." Light, dry, slightly amused. "I am told you are not afraid of doors. Let us see if you are afraid of old women." Vesper crossed the room and made the curtsy her mother had taught her. "Sit." The Dowager studied her. "So, you are Margaret's girl." Vesper went still. "You knew my mother. I knew your mother when she was 18, and engaged to a man she did not love. And when she met your father 6 months later and decided that drawing rooms could go to the devil." The Dowager's face softened, briefly. "I was very fond of your mother. I was sorry beyond saying when I learned of her death. I was sorrier still when I learned what had become of her daughter. You did not know I existed until last week. I knew you existed. I did not know where you were. Your uncle was efficient at preventing letters. He intercepted 3 of mine over the years. By the time I learned the trail had grown cold, you were 15. You tried to find me. I tried, and I failed. I am not in the habit of failing, and I do not forget it when I do. When my godson came to me 3 days ago and told me, with a great deal of cold fury, that your uncle had attempted to settle a debt by sending a young woman of his household into mine, and gave me her name, I understood at once 2 things. The first, that fate had brought you to my door at last. The second, that my godson would not see it that way for some time. He thinks I am sent against him. He thinks any unexpected gift is poisoned. He has earned the suspicion. The world has not been gentle with him." The fire popped quietly. The Dowager rose and crossed to a small writing desk. She returned with a leather-bound book. This is the book Mrs. Penhallow keeps for what she calls particular accounts. For nearly 30 years, I have used a portion of this household's funds to assist women in circumstances not unlike your own. Wives whose husbands have gone bad, daughters whose fathers have gone worse. Servants turned out without character because their master could not control himself. The Duke knows of this work. He has not stopped it. He has not, until very recently, much approved of it. Vesper looked at the book. "I wish you to learn this work. I wish you, in time, to take part of it from my hands. Not all at once, but I am 67 years old, and I do not intend to take this work to the grave with me. I have been in this house a single night." "You have," the Dowager agreed, "and you walked into my son's study uninvited at the end of it, and you spoke to a man twice your weight in temper, as though you were his equal in the matter of yourself. I have been waiting 20 years for someone to do that to him. Mrs. Penhallow has been corresponding for some weeks with a milliner in Yarmouth on a matter that is not entirely about hats. The letters lie in this book. Read them, and tell me by this afternoon what you believe is actually being arranged." The Dowager retired into the inner room, leaving Vesper alone with a fire and a leather book full of the careful, encoded penmanship of women who could not afford to write their meaning plainly. It took her under an hour. The milliner was a widow with 2 children, and a brother-in-law who had begun to come to the shop in the evenings, on terms the letters did not name plainly, but that no woman who had grown up under Vesper's uncle could fail to recognize. The correspondence was a long, careful negotiation about how to extract the woman and her children, what story would be told, and what household in the north might receive her on a respectable cover. The dowager returned shortly before noon. Well, the hats are not the matter. The woman is. The 3rd letter implies that the brother-in-law has been told that the woman is consumptive and being sent to the coast for her health. The 5th letter implies that this story has begun to fail. The 6th letter says only that the children are still well. Mrs. Penhallow is asking, I think, whether she should send a man down. The dowager smiled, small and sharpening. What would you advise? I have been here one night. You have read 6 letters and named the truth of them in under an hour. Whoever is sent should not announce himself in advance. The woman has been afraid for a long time. Whatever cover he goes under, let it be one she can refuse. Otherwise, you will have rescued a woman who does not yet know she has been rescued, and that is almost as bad as not rescuing her at all. The dowager placed her thin, cold hand briefly over Vesper's. You have done well, child. A knock. Mrs. Penhallow entered. His Grace asks that Miss Aldwyn attend him in the library at 3. The dowager's eyes went to Vesper. Go to him. He will tell you the terms of the house. He was already in the library when she came down. The afternoon sun fell through the tall windows in long bars of pale gold. The Duke stood beside the smaller hearth, with a book open in one hand, not reading. He closed it at her entrance. Miss Aldwyn, your Grace. Sit. She sat. He did not. He stood opposite her, hands clasped behind his back. You have spent your morning with my mother. I have. She has set you a task. She has. He waited. She did not elaborate. After a beat, the corner of his mouth moved very slightly. Good. I should not have welcomed it if you had told me what passes between her and her ledger on your 2nd day in this house. I would not have told you on any day. He looked at her. That is also good. He moved away from the fire to the window. Without turning, he said, You will understand that I have spent the morning making certain inquiries. About me. About you. About your uncle. About the carriage that brought you here. I have not finished. I will not finish for some weeks. But I have begun, and I think you should know that I have, because I do not wish you to discover it later and decide that I have been deceitful. I am grateful, Your Grace. He turned, one brow lifted. Grateful. Yes. Most women in your position would not be. Most women in my position would not have been told. He came back from the window and sat at last in the chair opposite hers. I have a question for you. You will answer it honestly. Did your uncle tell you, before you came here, anything about me? Anything at all? She considered. Yes. His eyes sharpened. Tell me what? He told me 3 things. The first, that you were a hard man, and that I should expect no kindness from you. The second, that your father had ruined his, although when I asked how, he did not answer. The third, that I should not, on any account, mention to you the name Aurelian. The Duke went still. He did not change color, but the room around him changed. A small, deep cold had entered. Aurelian, he said. Yes. He did not say why. He did not. He said only that you would not bear hearing it. He said, if I mentioned it, you would put me out at once, and that I should keep it back in case the day came when I had need of it. In case the day came when you had need of it. Yes. A long silence. She had decided, on the long ascent up from the still room, that she would not lie to him today. Not because he had been kind. He had not. but because she had spent 12 years in a house in which she had been lied to, and she would not begin her life over by becoming a small new liar in a larger one. The Duke said very quietly, "Thank you for telling me." She had not expected that. That name, he said, belonged to a young man who once mattered to my brother. My younger brother. He died 3 years ago. The name has come into my house only in connection with the worst of what came after his death. You are not the first to be sent here carrying it as a weapon. You are the first to lay it down before it has been used. May I ask, Your Grace, who Aurelian was? He looked at her. Not yet. The matter is older than I am ready to set out before you. There will be a day for it. I will not press. I know. He rose and went again to the window. You will be assigned to my mother as her companion. You will assist Mrs. Penhallow with the household correspondence. You will be paid a wage. I will not have it said in my house that a woman lives here unpaid for her work. The wage will be set against the debt by which you came, until that debt is discharged. You will not be a prisoner here. The doors are not locked. He paused. You will also be watched, not by me directly, but by people in my employ. I am telling you so that you will not feel deceived if at some future moment you come to suspect it. I prefer to be honest about my distrust. I would rather know. I thought you would. He turned and crossed back, but remained standing beside the chair. 3 further matters. Yes. The first. The west wing of this house is closed. It is closed because 3 years ago my younger brother died there. He was 24. It is enough for you to know that the wing has not been opened since, that I do not enter it, and that you will not. You are not to speak of it to my mother. If, in time, I wish to tell you more, I will. We are agreed. The second. There is a child in this house. She is 9. She is my brother's daughter. Her name is Isolde. She lives on the 2nd floor of the family wing, with a nurse and a tutor she dislikes. She is intelligent, she is grieving, and she is the only thing in this house that I cannot, by an act of will, make better. She will, I expect, attempt to dislike you. She has also a habit of finding her way into rooms she has not been invited into, which you and she may discover you have in common. I will be glad to meet her. You will be glad until you have. After that, you will continue. The third matter. He paused. Last night you stood in that doorway and told me that the matter of who you were would be decided by what you did under this roof. I have thought about that sentence. Your Grace, I did not say it to be thought about. I said it because I believed it. That is why I have thought about it. He said, I do not believe you yet. I think it more likely than not that your uncle has sent you here intending you to do me harm, and that you do not know, yourself, what particular form that harm is meant to take. He is relying on you to be useful to him without your knowing. I have considered that. What have you concluded? I cannot prove I am not what you fear, because anything I do or say you may suppose was rehearsed. I can only conclude that I will live in this house as the woman I am, and that if my uncle has prepared something inside me to be used against you, I will discover it as you do. You can promise me nothing. I will not accept promises. I understand. I will, however, accept the conduct you have just described. For now. It was not warm, it was not kind, but it was a great deal more than he had given to anyone in some long while. You may go. She rose. At the door she paused. Your Grace. Miss Aldwyn. I would rather be given to the law for what I have done than be kept in your house for what I have not. If you ever come to believe me guilty of something I have not done, I would ask you to give me to the law for that as well. I would rather face a magistrate than your mistaken mercy. That is the most disturbing thing you have said to me yet. I beg your pardon. I did not say it to disturb you. I know. That is what disturbs me." She inclined her head and left the library. The door closed behind her with the soft, considered click of a thing being thought about by the man on the other side of it. She did not know yet that 2 floors above her, a child in a window seat had watched the carriage come up the drive last night and had been watching, ever since, for the thin, dark figure who had stepped out of it. She met Isolde Ravenholt 3 mornings later, by accident, which Vesper was beginning to suspect was the only way one ever met that child. She was in the morning room with a basket of letters. The child was simply there, suddenly, in the doorway, watching. "Good morning," Vesper said. The child did not answer. "You are Isolde. That is not an answer to a question. You did not ask one." I was deciding whether to. The child stepped into the room with the deliberate slowness of a small ambassador, walked past the table, and sat down on the cushioned window seat. She arranged her skirts with the precision of a woman 3 times her age. "You are the one from the carriage." "I am. Mrs. Penhallow says you are my grandmother's new companion. She is. You are not a relation." "I am not." "Then why are you here?" Vesper considered. "Your uncle is settling a debt. My uncle owed him money. I am here to work the debt off. You are paying somebody else's debt." "Yes." "That is unjust." "It is." "Why did you agree to it?" "I was not asked to agree to it." The child tucked her chin onto her knees. "What is your name?" "Vesper Aldwin." "Mine is Isolde Margaret Ravenholt. That is 3 names." "I know." A pause. "You have been crying." Vesper went still. "I have not. The pain does not lie. The light comes through it differently when a face has been wet within the hour. You were not crying when you came in. So you have been crying since you sat down." I did not feel myself cry. I did not say that you knew. I said that you had. Vesper put her hand briefly to her cheek. It was not wet. She had only been sitting in a warm room with a basket of other people's troubles, and her body had remembered what her mind had not given it leave to feel. The child watched without comment. Then, abruptly, "My uncle does not know I come into rooms." "I am sure he does." "He does not. He thinks I am with my nurse. Mrs. Penhallow knows. The footmen know. My grandmother knows. My uncle does not. If you tell him, I will not speak to you again. I will not tell him." "Why not?" "Because," Vesper said slowly, "I have spent a great many years in a house in which I had only one place that was my own, and that place was my own only because no one else knew of it. I will not be the one to take such a place from another person." The child went very still. She did not turn from the window. "Where was yours?" "There was a room above the stables. It had a low ceiling and 1 square window. I went there in the afternoons when my uncle had guests, and in the evenings when he was in his cups. I read there. I slept there sometimes. I kept a tin under the floorboard with 3 things in it." "What were the 3 things?" "A piece of my mother's hair, a silver thimble that had been my grandmother's, and a piece of paper on which I had written, very carefully, every dish my mother had ever cooked for me, in the order she had cooked them, so that I would not forget her voice naming the food." The child considered this gravely. "Was it cold?" "In winter, yes." "Did you mind?" "It was warmer than the rooms below." The child nodded once. "Mine," she said, "is the south end of the long gallery. There is a window seat behind a curtain. The curtain is too long for the seat by about a yard, so it falls all the way to the floor. If you sit with your knees up, the curtain hides you entirely. It is my place. It sounds like a very good place." "It is. You may come if you wish." "Once. Only once. I shall watch you and decide whether to let you come again. I am honored. I have not yet decided whether to honor you. I have only decided not to insult you yet. A pause. You will not last in this house. People do not last in this house. My mother did not last. My father did not last. My grandfather did not last. So you will not. I am only telling you so that you will not be surprised. Thank you for telling me. I shall try to last longer than you expect. You will not. The child paused. I should be glad if you did. She slid down from the seat, straightened her crooked pinafore, and crossed to the doorway. At the corner of the corridor, she paused and looked back at the morning room door for a full half-minute before going on. She did not know that the Duke had passed the open door of the morning room a quarter of an hour before on his way to the estate office, and had paused at the sound of his niece's voice. He had heard the child say, "You will not last in this house." He had heard the new woman say, "I shall try to last longer than you expect." He had walked on without making a sound, because he had not wished to be the kind of man who interrupted a child for whom interruption was not safe. He spent the rest of his morning in his study, signing letters he afterwards did not entirely remember signing. It had been a long time since anyone in his house had said anything he wished, against all reason, to be true. The first letter came on her 9th day. It came not to the front of the house, where the post was sorted in the estate office under Mr. Ferncliffe's exact and unforgiving hand, but to the side door. The undermaid pressed it into her hand, in the back corridor, with the air of a girl performing a small, vaguely scandalous favor. "Letter for you, miss," came to the village by the morning coach, and Tom brought it up. Tom had been told, then. Or paid. "Thank you." I shall mention to Tom that all letters for me must go through the estate office. The maid's face fell, then composed itself. Vesper went up to her room and sat on the edge of the bed before opening it. The letter was short. "My dear, I trust you are settling well into your new circumstances. I write only to remind you of 2 matters. The first is that the conditions of your placement run for a term of 7 years from the date of settlement, during which time you remain under the responsibility of your guardian. The second is that your guardian retains the right to be informed of the conduct, manners, and disposition of his ward in her new household by letter, sent through the village post under the name of Mr. Albright, attorney at law, no less than once per fortnight. Your first such letter is expected by the next post. You will, of course, exercise discretion. Your faithful friend in this, A. Albright." She read it twice. Beautifully done. Not a threat. Nothing in it could be shown to a magistrate. A perfectly civil reminder in the dry voice of a country attorney, with the addition of a small request for letters at fortnightly intervals. Exactly what the Duke had told her, in the library that her uncle would do. She thought about the 3 possible courses. She could write the letters as instructed. She would, in effect, betray him with menus and dates. She could write nothing, and let her uncle do whatever he proposed, under the consequences mentioned in the document of settlement. She did not know what those consequences were. Or she could go to the Duke. She rose. She washed her face. She picked up the letter and folded it back along its original creases and slid it inside a smaller envelope. She went down 2 flights, crossed the great hall, and asked the footman at the study door whether His Grace was within. "He is. Engaged with Mr. Ferncliffe. I shall wait." She waited in the corridor for nearly an hour. She did not know that Mr. Ferncliffe was at that moment explaining to the Duke, with the care of a man laying out a chess problem, that an under-coachman in the village had that morning been seen taking a single letter from the morning post, separating it from the others, and bringing it up the back way. She did not know that when the footman announced her, the Duke had looked across the desk at Mr. Ferncliffe and said, "Well, She knew only that the door was open. She went in. The footman closed the door. A letter came for me this morning. It was addressed to me and brought to the side door by a man called Tom, given to a maid called Bessie, who brought it to me directly without taking it to your estate office. I have read it once. I have not answered it. I have not destroyed it. I thought it best to bring it to you myself. She did not curtsy. She laid the small envelope upon his desk. He sat down. He drew the envelope toward him, broke the seal with a small ivory knife, and read it slowly. Twice. He set it down and smoothed it flat. You read this. I read it. You did not write a reply. I did not. You came to me. I came to you. A pause. Why? Because you told me, on my second day, that any letter that came in from me would be brought to you first. I agreed. I did not agree because I had to. I have had 9 days to consider it. I am not sorry. You are very calm, Miss Aldwin. I am very tired. He rose and came around the desk. You understand what this is. I do. Tell me, in your own words. It is my uncle reaching across this country and putting his hand on my wrist. A request, in the form of a reminder, that I write to him at fortnightly intervals about your household, your servants, your habits. It is dressed as a legal courtesy. It is a leash. He nodded. You know what would happen if you simply wrote the letters. I would betray you, with small, careful sentences, with the household menus, with the days you are away, with anything my enemy could weave into a rope long enough to hang you with. You have intelligence enough to know that. I have lived in his house. You know what would happen if you wrote nothing. I do not know. He has the document of settlement. I have not been permitted to read it. He will have written into it consequences I have not been allowed to know. He watched her. You are afraid. I am afraid. She had not meant to say it. The word slipped out at the very end. After a moment, very quietly, you will not write the letter. I will not. You will not destroy it. I have not. You will not be left, in this matter, to face your uncle alone. I do not know what you can do. You will not face him alone, Miss Aldwin. That is not the same as my saying I have decided what to do. It is the same as my saying, you will not face him alone. It was the closest thing to a vow she had heard from him. He went back behind the desk. I will keep this. Mr. Ferncliff will look into the man, Tom, and the maid, Bessie. You will not take any letter from anyone in this household, by any side door, by any kindness again. If a letter comes for you, you will know nothing of it until it has come through the estate office and through me. I understand. You may go. She inclined her head. Your Grace, Miss Aldwin, thank you. You should not yet thank me. She did not see, as she walked down the corridor, that the Duke remained at his desk for a long time without moving, and at last rang the bell. 2 things, Ferncliff. The man Tom is to be paid until the end of the quarter and dismissed. The maid Bessie is to be spoken to by Mrs. Penhallow and given a single plain warning. The second, I want a man placed in the village by Friday. Discreet. He is to do nothing but watch the post and tell us, by private hand, the source and direction of any letter sent in the name of Albright. Mr. Ferncliff's pen paused. That is, with respect, an investigation. Yes. Of Aldwin. Yes. I had understood that your Grace had for some weeks been resisting opening such an investigation. I had so resisted. What has changed? The Duke did not for a moment answer. I have been given an occasion of cause, Ferncliff. By, with respect, whom? By the woman he sent into my house, who has just walked into this room and put it on my desk. Mr. Ferncliff was briefly silent. I see. I do not, Ferncliff. Not yet. But I am beginning to. Send the man. By Friday, your Grace. The trouble came 4 days later, and it did not come from her uncle. It came from inside the house. She was in the linen room above the still room with Mrs. Penhallow. The dowager had taken cold and was keeping to her rooms. Mr. Ferncliff had been called away. She heard the footsteps a moment before Mrs. Penhallow did. They came up the back stair in a hurry and did not announce themselves. The door opened. A man stood in it, whom Vesper had never seen. Perhaps 40, in the dark, sober coat of an upper servant. But it was not the green livery of Marchwood Hall. Thick about the shoulders. A face that had once been handsome, and that drink had begun to thicken. His eyes, the moment they fell on Vesper, did a small, particular movement she recognized. He had been told what she looked like. He had been sent to find her. Mrs. Penhallow set down the count book. "You have lost your way. The household is below. I am looking for Miss Aldwyn. You may give your message to me. I am to give it to Miss Aldwyn herself. I have ridden from her uncle's house this morning. I have a private word for her. You will leave this room, and you will go down the front stair, and you will wait in the small parlor beside the side door, and you will be sent for if the lady chooses to receive you. I am to deliver my message and ride back. I am not to be kept. You are not to be kept. You are to be received with such civility as your master is owed. Your master is owed civility. He is not owed entry to his Grace's linen room." "Mrs. Penhallow," Vesper said quietly, "I will go down with him to the parlor. I would rather have it over." Mrs. Penhallow looked at her. In that look, Vesper saw the thing she had only half suspected. Mrs. Penhallow knew, not all of it, but enough, and she was not now going to permit her to be alone. "I shall come down. You need not. I shall come down. The Duke would expect it." They went, the three of them, down the back stair and into the small green parlor where Vesper had waited on her first night. Mrs. Penhallow took a chair near the door, with the air of a woman settling in for a small siege. "Speak your message." The man's eyes flicked to Mrs. Penhallow and back. "In private." "There is no private here. Your uncle would expect. My uncle is owed such civility as he has earned. That civility does not extend to a private interview in this house. You may speak before Mrs. Penhallow, or you may take your message back." The man's jaw worked. "Your uncle sends his compliments. He has not yet had the letter that was due last week. He is content to overlook the lateness if the letter is sent by the next post." A small pause. "He bids me say," the man went on, watching her, "that the matter of your sister is, as you know, entirely in his hands." Vesper went very still. Mrs. Penhallow did not move. "I have no sister?" Vesper said. The man smiled, small and pleased. "Your uncle has felt for some time that you have been somewhat reserved on the subject of family. He has wished me to mention, in particular, the school in Bath, and the small allowance that has been paid there these 10 years, and the kindness with which the lady who keeps it has been instructed to consider the child as her own, contingent upon the satisfactory continuance of certain arrangements between your uncle and yourself." Vesper did not speak. She could not. She had not known. The realization settled in pieces. Her uncle had kept, for 10 years, a small living thing that was hers and hadn't been hers to know about. 10 years for the moment a leash should be needed, a sister, if it were true. Either way, he had her by the throat, or he knew it. Mrs. Penhallow rose. She walked across the room, opened the parlor door, and said in the same flat voice, "You will wait outside. You will not leave the house. You will sit on the bench by the side door where I can see you. If you stir from it, you will be put off the property by the gardeners. Out." He went. She closed the door and turned. "Sit down, child." It was the first time Mrs. Penhallow had called her child. Vesper sat. Her knees had gone weak. "Did you know?" "I did not. I believed not. I have been in this house 41 years. I do not, as a rule, believe pretty answers. I believe you. I do not believe him. I am going to send for his grace. I cannot ask you to. You are not asking me." She rose. At the door, she paused. "You have been very brave. You will not now be foolish. You will sit in this chair, and you will wait. You will leave the man to his grace." The door closed. Vesper sat in the cold room and listened to the faint, distant sounds of a house going about its day. A clock chimed the half-hour. He had told her, in this very house, that one more hidden truth would end her time under his roof. She had not hidden this one. She had not known it. She did not know whether that distinction was going to matter. Her hands began to shake. She folded them together to make them stop. The door opened. The Duke walked in. He did not speak. He looked at her. His face was unreadable, but his eyes were not. They were the eyes of a man who had been told, in 2 sentences, what had occurred, and was now calculating exactly how he was going to break the trap that had been laid around her. "Miss Aldwyn, you will tell me, please, exactly what was said in this room," she told him. Everything. Bath. The 10 years. She did not know whether the child was real. She did not know which would be worse. He listened without interrupting once. "You did not know. I did not. You believe me when I say that I believe you." "Yes." He was silent. "You understand that this changes a great many things. It does not change them in the direction you may fear." She looked up. "Your uncle has overplayed his hand. A man who threatens a woman with the harming of a child he has kept secret from her for 10 years has not increased his power over her. He has made an enemy of every honest person in the room with her when he does it. He has given me the right and the reason to go after him with the entire weight of this estate. He has made me yours to defend." Yes, a pause. "Whether or not," he added quietly, "you ever had been before. There is a child in a school in Bath. Yes, we will find her. If she is real, we will fetch her out by the end of the month. She will be brought to this house, and she will be safe. If she is not real, then your uncle has invented her, and we will discover that as well. Either way, your uncle will not retain the use of her against you. I give you my word. I have not earned your word. You have." As of this morning, he rose. "I shall now attend to the gentleman in the corridor. Your Grace. Miss Aldwyn, you will not harm him. I will not harm him today. I shall send him back to your uncle with 2 messages. The first is that any communication regarding any child shall be addressed exclusively to my solicitors. The second is that any further attempt to communicate with you, except through that channel, will be regarded by me as an act against your person, and that I am, as your uncle is aware, a man who does not always limit himself to the courts in such matters." He paused. "You did not," he added more quietly, "ask me not to threaten him." "I did not." The corner of his mouth moved. "Good." He went out. Mrs. Penhallow came in a moment later, sat down, put a small dry hand briefly on Vesper's, and said only, "We shall have tea, child. The kettle is already on." Vesper did not weep then. She would weep later, in her room, with the door closed. But she would weep, she understood now, in a house that had decided, that morning, to stand between her and the man who had sent her into it. 2 floors above, a child in a window seat had heard the words, "Sister," and "Bath," and 10 years through the wall. She wrote, in her careful 9-year-old hand, a single short letter, sealed it, and slipped it under the door of the Dowager's apartments. The Dowager found it half an hour later, read it twice, and said softly, "So, even the child has chosen." The Dowager rose from her bed the morning after, against the advice of her physician. "I am 67, she told Mrs. Penhallow. I have outlived 2 husbands, 3 physicians, and 1 prime minister. I will not be defeated by a head cold while my granddaughter is composing her own correspondence. Bring me my shawl. She received Vesper at 9:30 in the inner sitting room. Sit down, child. You look as though you have not slept. I have not. You will hear nothing further from him this morning. From the Duke? No. You will. Sit. Read this. She passed across the small writing table a folded paper of nursery size, sealed with a child's clumsy wafer. Vesper opened it. The hand was small and careful, with 1 or 2 letters formed wrong. Grandmama, I have heard a thing in the house today that I should not have heard. The new lady has a sister. The sister is in a school in Bath. The lady did not know she had her until today. The man who came on the horse said it. He said it in a way I did not like. I think the sister has been kept from the lady on purpose, and I think the man came today so that the lady will be afraid to do something my uncle has asked her to do. I am writing because I know that if I were the new lady, I should be afraid of the sister being hurt. I should be more afraid of that than of anything. I think we should go and fetch the sister out of Bath and bring her to this house. I have £1 and 3 shillings and 9 pence in my drawer. It is from my last birthday, and from the coin Mr. Calbourne gave me at Christmas. I should like to give the money toward it. Please give it directly to the lady. I should like it to be from me to her. I am your loving granddaughter, Isolde Margaret Ravenholt. Vesper read it twice. She set the letter down very carefully, placed her hands flat on either side of it, and drew a breath that did not quite reach the bottom of her chest, and then another that did. She did not weep. She came very close. How long? Vesper said quietly. Has she been writing letters like this? She has not. This is the first to anyone. My granddaughter has not, since her father's death, voluntarily written a letter, except when threatened by a tutor. That she has done so this morning is a thing of considerable significance. I do not deserve it. You do, but it would be foolish of you to argue the point. Drink your tea. I have taken 3 actions this morning. The first, I have written to my goddaughter, Mrs. Hartington, in Bath. She will call upon the school in the character of a private gentlewoman, wishing to consider it for her own ward. Yes. The second, I have spoken with my son. He has written to his solicitors in London for a memorandum concerning the legal standing of a child of unproven parentage residing in a school. The memorandum will be ready by Wednesday. Yes. The third, I have replied to my granddaughter. I have told her that her offer is accepted and that her £1 and 3 shillings and 9 pence is from this morning regarded by her uncle and myself as the first contribution of the household to the matter. I have told her that she is invited this afternoon to take tea with you in the long gallery. Forgive me. I have not yet issued the invitation. You will issue it when she comes to your door at 3. She will not require great ceremony. She will require only that you do not, on any account, weep on her. I have noticed. The afternoon came slowly. At 10 minutes before 3, Vesper was sitting in the window seat behind the overlong curtain. She had carried up 2 cups, a pot of tea, and a small bowl of dried apples and walnuts, which Mrs. Trevenna had wordlessly assembled and pressed into her hands. At 3 exactly, she heard small footsteps along the gallery. Isolde came around the curtain in her dark blue dress and a freshly straightened pinafore. Her hair had been brushed. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. The child did not climb up onto the seat. Vesper said quietly, I should like to thank you. The child went still. I have been told nothing about a panel. I have been told only that you wrote to your grandmother yesterday. that you offered something of your own toward a matter that concerns me, and that you wished it to come from you to me directly. I shall not discuss the panel. I shall only say once that it was the kindest letter that has ever been written about me." The child looked at the floor. After a moment, almost inaudibly, "Did Grandmama tell you?" I cried. "You did not. She told me you did not." "Good." The child climbed up. She accepted the cup of tea Vesper poured for her, with milk and no sugar, having watched closely to see whether sugar would be assumed. Mama used to sit here. Vesper went still. "She used to bring her work," the child said. "She did needlework. She did not like it, but she did it. I sat where you are sitting. She sat where I am. She told me about birds. She knew the names of all of them. She said the swallows were her favorites because they always came back. She said most things did not come back. Yes, she did not come back." "No, I do not," the child said. "Talk about Mama. I do not talk about Papa. Mrs. Penhallow has said so. My uncle has said so. Nurse cries if I mention them. If you talk to me about any of them, I shall stop coming up here. I shall not. Not unless you bring them. I should like sometimes to bring them. Then bring them. As often or as seldom as you wish. I shall listen. I shall not make a face. I shall not cry on you. That is a promise." The child looked at her. Then she nodded once. "The walnuts are good. Mrs. Trevenna." I knew. She salts hers more than the kitchen book says. A pause. "You may come up here whenever you like. Sometimes I am at lessons. Sometimes I am elsewhere. You will not be hurt if I am not here. I will not." A bird crossed against the pale sky and was gone. "He will not send you back." Vesper looked at her. "My uncle. He will not send you back. You may stop being afraid of that. He has decided. I watched him this morning. He had the face he gets. When he has decided to be cross with someone who is not in the house, he has not had that face in a long time. He had it because of what was said in the green parlor. He is going to be cross at your uncle and not at you." The child reached across and patted Vesper's hand once, briskly. "I am telling you so that you will sleep tonight." Vesper had not expected to weep this afternoon. She did not. Her eyes filled briefly. She blinked them clear. The child looked away politely at the window. "Thank you." "You are welcome." The child reached for a third walnut. "Mrs. Trevenna does this on purpose. There are always exactly enough for 3 each. You notice everything." "I notice everything," the child said, "and tell almost no one. I am telling you because I have decided you are the sort of person to whom one may tell things." Some way down the corridor, the Duke stood listening to a conversation he had not been invited to overhear. He heard his niece, who had not voluntarily spoken to a stranger in 3 years, say, "Mama used to sit here." He heard her say, "I should like sometimes to bring them." He heard the new woman say, "Then bring them. I shall listen." He heard his niece say, "I am telling you so that you will sleep tonight." He stood for a long moment in the gallery. Then he turned, very quietly, and went back the way he had come. The quiet held for 9 days. Mrs. Hartington's first letter from Bath came on the 4th. There was, in residence, one child of about 10, with very dark hair and a particular expression about the mouth. The child was introduced as Miss Margaret. No surname had been given. The fees were paid by a country attorney on behalf of a guardian who preferred not to be named. Vesper read the letter and was silent. Margaret was her mother's name. The dowager said only, "The memorandum from London comes Wednesday. We shall set Friday for Mrs. Hartington's second visit. By the following Tuesday, I should expect the child to be on her way to this house." The Duke called her into his study that evening. You understand that your name does not appear in the memorandum. It does not. It cannot. Your uncle must not know, until the child is in this house, that you have any part in her removal. Mrs. Hartington acts on my mother's behalf. If your uncle should discover that you are the person on whose behalf the matter is moving, he will move her, or worse, before we can reach her. I understand. The Duke's mouth moved very slightly. My niece has informed Mrs. Penhallow this morning that when the child arrives, she would prefer not to give up her own room, but would be willing to surrender the second-floor schoolroom for the child's use, on the condition that Mr. Whittle be removed. Vesper, despite everything, smiled. It was the first time she had smiled in his study. He saw it. He did not remark. Will Mr. Whittle be removed? He will be reassigned to duties more suited to his temperament. Yes, the Duke said. Miss Aldwyn. Yes. We have not, since the morning in the green parlor, spoken of what occurred in it. We have not. I have not in some years owed an apology. I owe one to you. I told you on your second day that if you were sent against me, I would give you to the law. I have decided that I regret the manner in which I said it. I did not give the warning out of strength. I gave it out of fear. He paused. When you have a moment in which to speak, you will tell me whether the apology, partial as it is accepted. It is. He inclined his head once. Then we proceed. The blow fell on the morning of the 15th day. It came by the side door, but not as a letter. It came as a man. He came at 6:15 and was admitted by Bessie. He was a stranger. He carried no name. He asked for a private word with his grace on a matter which would not, he said, wait upon the regular hours. By his coat he was a clerk. By his face he was something else. Bessie let him in. He was given the small green parlor. She went to fetch the Duke. The man waited less than 5 minutes before he rose and went to the door. He went to the estate office. Locked. He went to the Duke's study. Locked. He went up the back stair. He was on the half landing when Mrs. Penhallow, coming down with the linen, met him. You will return to the parlor. You will sit in it. You will wait in it. If you are upon this stair in another minute, I shall ring the bell that calls the gardeners. The man considered her. He turned. He went down. Mrs. Penhallow followed at a distance, locked him into the parlor, and went to fetch the Duke. Vesper was sent for at 7:30. She was admitted to the Duke's study to find Mr. Ferncliff at his elbow, Mrs. Penhallow by the hearth, the dowager in a chair near the desk in a shawl. I shall be brief, the Duke said. A man came to this house this morning at 6:15. I have spent the last half hour with him. It will be sufficient for you to know 3 things. Yes. The first. He has, in his coat, papers purporting to be authorizations from a magistrate in your uncle's county for the recovery of a ward believed to be detained at this address. The papers are forged. The second. Among the papers in his coat is a letter, sealed, addressed to a person within this household, not to you. The letter instructs the recipient to provide certain particulars regarding the routines of this household. The letter promises payment. The recipient has been a member of this household for 11 years. Mr. Ferncliff stepped forward and read, Mr. Thomas Beaumont. Under butler. Particular duties include supervision of the locking of the family wing at night. Has access, by reason of his post, to the keys of the estate office between 10 in the evening and 6 in the morning. Has, on 3 occasions in the last 4 months, requested 2 days personal leave at short notice. 2 of those leaves correlate with letters known to have left or arrived at the village post in the name of Mr. Albright. A small silence. He's been here 11 years. He has. Then he did not begin to be your enemy when I came. He did not. He began, by his own account this morning, when your uncle approached him by letter 4 months past. I see. The third matter, the Duke said. He paused. Among the papers in Mr. Beaumont's coat was a private letter from your uncle concerning a search to be made, when convenient, of certain rooms in the family wing. The letter named, particularly, the room which had been my brother Adrian's. The letter instructed Mr. Beaumont to find any letters or papers in my brother's hand, referring to the death of your uncle's eldest son, and to convey those papers to your uncle. Vesper went still. My brother, the Duke said quietly, had been gathering, in the last weeks of his life, the truth of how Aurelian Aldwin died. Aurelian had been Adrian's friend, at Oxford. The official account was a fever. The actual account, my brother had come to believe, was a duel. The man who fired the shot had been a friend of your uncle, and was protected by him afterwards. My brother died of his own fever in the spring, before he could finish what he had begun. The Duke's face did not change. I have not, until this winter, had cause to reopen the matter. The letter found this morning in Mr. Beaumont's coat is, in itself, an admission that there is something in my brother's papers your uncle is afraid of. There is. Mr. Ferncliff and I have spent the last hour reviewing certain items. There is enough to lay an information against your uncle in his own county for the obstruction of a magistrate's inquest into a death he was bound by law to assist in clarifying. Your uncle, Mr. Ferncliff said quietly, will not, when this is complete, remain a man whose name is received in his county. The Duke looked at Vesper. I have been 3 years late in coming to this. I should not have left it so long. You did not know what to do with it. I did not. I do now. He turned to Mr. Ferncliff. Take Mr. Beaumont to the magistrate. Take the man with him. Be back by supper. Mr. Ferncliff inclined his head and went out. Mrs. Penhallow followed. The Dowager rose slowly and put her thin, cold hand on Vesper's shoulder. You did very well not to weep this morning, child. I have not yet. Then go and weep somewhere I cannot see you, and come back when you are done. Mrs. Hartington's second letter is expected by the 11 o'clock post. The Duke and Vesper were left alone. You did not know about Mr. Beaumont. I did not. I did not suspect that you did. Thank you. A silence. You have not asked me what I shall do in the matter of my brother's papers. I have not. I shall not keep you waiting longer than I must. I know. She rose. At the door, she paused. There is now in this house not one person against me. There were, when I came, perhaps 2. In a fortnight, you have removed both. There is no room here in which I am not, in some way, in someone's keeping. I have not had that since I was 12. He did not answer at once. When he did, his voice was lower. Then we shall do our best to see that you do not lose it again. She wept for 4 full minutes in her own room. She washed her face. She came down at 11. By past, Mrs. Hartington's second letter had arrived. The child in Bath was named Margaret Aldwin on the inside cover of her schoolroom Bible. The child, who did not remember her mother, had been told that her mother's name had been Margaret. She had been told she had no other family in the world. The Dowager handed the letter to Vesper. Friday. Friday. She did not weep. She had wept that morning. She had no further weeping in her, that day, for a child she had not yet seen. She had a side. She had a household. She had an enemy 3 threads down from his own ruin. She had a sister. The carriage from Bath came on the Sunday evening, an hour after dark. The Dowager had had the side door lit. Mrs. Penhallow stood at it. Mrs. Trevenna had laid a small hot supper in the second-floor schoolroom. Vesper had been told that the meeting between herself and the child would be made there. She had spent the Sunday in a state she could not have described. She had been to morning service. She had taken her midday meal with the Dowager, the Duke, and Mr. Calbourne. She had walked in the South Garden for an hour because the Dowager had said briskly, "You are going to break something inside if you sit in a chair this afternoon." Mrs. Penhallow came up at 8:30. "She is here, child. Come." The schoolroom was warm. Mrs. Hartington gave Vesper a small, steady nod and said in a low voice, "She's at the window." The child stood at the window in a thin gray traveling coat that was too big for her at the shoulders. She was looking out at the dark. Her hair was in soft tangles at her shoulders. She was small. Vesper crossed the room slowly. She did not speak. She knelt on the rug a little way from the window, far enough that the child could refuse to come, near enough that she could come if she wished. "I am Vesper." The child did not at once turn. Then, slowly, she did. She had her mother's mouth. The child looked at her for what felt to both of them a great deal longer than it was. "Are you my sister?" "Yes, I am." The child considered. "I have been told by Mr. Albright that I had no family." "I know. He told me the same of you. He is an unkind man, and a dishonest one. We will not be needing him any longer." "Are we going to live here?" "You are. With me. With our grandmother, who is upstairs." "I have a grandmother. I did not know I had one until 2 weeks ago. There is a girl your own age. She is your cousin. She is called Isolde. She has been awake since 6 o'clock waiting to meet you, although she will not admit it. I have a cousin. You have a cousin." The child took another step. She stopped at the edge of the rug. "Could I, perhaps, sit on the rug with you? Sit on the rug with me." The child sat. She did not at once come close. She arranged her coat with the small, grave precision of a child who had learned early to take care of her own coat. Then, after a moment, she leaned the side of her head against Vesper's shoulder. Vesper put her arm around her. Down on the floor below, the Duke sat with his hand on the second drawer of his desk, where he had not laid his hand in 3 years except to lock it. He did not open it that night. The next day, the Dowager rose late. The child, who had been called in Bath Maggie, was given a small breakfast in the schoolroom by Vesper, and was met at 9:30 by Isolde, who had spent 2.5 hours choosing what to wear. The two children stood looking at one another for nearly a full minute without speaking. Then Isolde said gravely, "I have been told you are called Maggie." "Yes, I am Isolde. I do not, I should say at once, like to be called Issy. I have been called it twice, and I have not forgiven either of them. I will not." "Good. I have a window seat in the long gallery, behind a curtain. It is very private. You may come this afternoon. May I bring an apple?" "You may bring an apple." "May I bring my doll?" "What is her name?" "Anne. You may bring Anne." By 11, the two children had retired to the long gallery. Vesper was sent for at 11:30. She came into the Duke's study and closed the door. He stood at the window. He turned. "You have a sister." "I have. She is well. She is. She is afraid, in a way she has not yet allowed herself to say. But she is well. She is upstairs with Isolde at this moment. They are, against any prediction I could make, getting on. Isolde does not get on with anyone. I am aware." "Thank you," he said. "I have done nothing. You have walked through the door of my house carrying a debt your uncle wrote you into, and in 3 weeks you have brought him to a place where he stands accused at the assizes of conspiracy, threatened by a paper trail in 3 counties, and exposed to a public hearing in which he will be obliged to defend himself against charges he cannot meet. You have placed the hand. We are turning the wheel because of it. I have not done it alone. You have not. Neither, in 3 years, have I done anything in this house that needed doing. A silence. Vesper said carefully, "Your Grace," he said at the same moment. "Vesper." They both stopped. He inclined his head. "After you," he said gravely. "You are about to say to me that you wish me to remain in this house in some particular character. I should like to say to you, before you say it, that I have been sitting up at night for a week, thinking of how I should answer you. I have decided that I shall give you no answer that I have prepared. I shall give you, if it is asked, only the truth as I find it on the day I am asked. I shall not ask it of you today." She looked up. "I shall not ask it today," he said, "because I would rather you said it on a day your sister has been in this house for more than 12 hours, and on a day my mother has been out of her bed for more than 2, and on a day your uncle's first hearing at the assizes has come and gone, which by Mr. Ferncliffe's calculation will be Tuesday next. I understand. I shall, however, ask you something else today. I should like to be permitted to address my niece in your hearing on the matter of your sister's standing in this household. I should like to do it before luncheon. I should like to say, in the hearing of those persons that your sister is, from this day, the ward of this household, that her name is to be entered into the household book as Margaret Aldwyn, and that any person upon this estate found speaking of her or of her sister in any other terms than those of a member of the dowager's family will not remain upon this estate. In my hearing, your Grace." "Good." In the small drawing-room at noon, with Mrs. Penhallow standing by the door, and the dowager in the chair nearest the fire, and Vesper at the window, and Maggie on the rug at Vesper's feet, the Duke addressed his niece. He concluded with one further sentence which he had not promised. "Your Aunt Vesper, who is the elder sister of your cousin Maggie, is a member of this household, in this household, by the choice of this household, and not by the disposition of any agreement made by any person outside it. The agreement by which she came has been, this morning, lodged with my solicitors as the basis of certain proceedings. She is here because we wish her to be here." Isolde, on the rug beside Maggie, considered. "Uncle." "Yes, Isolde. You have used the word aunt." "I have. She is not yet my aunt." A small silence. "You are correct, Isolde. I have used the word in anticipation. I beg your pardon." Then she said, with the small dignity of a queen accepting a treaty, "I shall consider it, uncle, an anticipation that has my approval." The dowager laid her hand for a moment over her own mouth. Mrs. Penhallow looked at the ceiling. Vesper, at the window, did not manage entirely to keep her face still. She did, however, manage not to weep. The hearing at the assizes came on the Tuesday of the following week. It did not last long. Mr. Beaumont, advised by a solicitor he had not paid for, named Edmund Aldwyn. The man Cottesmore gave a similar account. The forged warrant was traced to a clerk in the same town. By the close of the hearing, 3 separate informations had been laid. The first, conspiracy against the household of His Grace, the Duke of Ravenholt. The second, the procuring of a forged warrant. The third, the obstruction of the magistrate's inquest, 11 years past, into the death of his own son. By the end of the month, Edmund Aldwyn's name had ceased to be received in any house of consequence in his county. By the end of the year, he had quietly removed to the continent. He did not return. The autumn turned. The first frost came on the morning after the hearing. The cedars on the south lawn went silvery. The dowager, now permitted to take her morning chocolate in the small sitting room, returned to her ledger with Vesper at her side. Maggie, 3 weeks in the house, no longer flinched at the sound of a man's footstep in the corridor. Isolde came down to the dining hall in the evenings now, in a clean pinafore, beside her cousin. Mr. Whittle had returned to the agency. He had been replaced by a soft-spoken Welsh widow named Mrs. Iphans, who arrived each morning at 8:30 with a small canvas bag of books over her shoulder. Vesper wrote, in the second week of November, a letter to Isolde that had been weeks in the writing. She told Isolde about the room above the stables and the tin under the floorboard and the 3 things in it. She told Isolde that the tin had been buried on the morning Vesper had left her uncle's house in a corner of the kitchen garden under a flagstone. She told her that the 3 things were now with her in this house, in the smallest drawer of the writing table in her bedroom, and that the tin was buried still where she had left it. Isolde read the letter twice over her breakfast and put it into the box behind the 3rd book on the 3rd shelf of the library. She did not mention it for nearly a fortnight. She mentioned it on a Sunday afternoon in the long gallery when the household was quiet. You have not yet decided which day. Vesper looked up. I have not. The day on which the tin will be opened. I have not. Isolde took, from the pocket of her pinafore, a single folded slip of paper. She turned it toward Vesper. On the back, in pencil, she had written 4 names. Maggie, Vesper, Grandmama, Isolde. These are who I should like to be in the room. You have not put your uncle, child. He should be in the room. But I did not put him, because I did not want to be the one to put him. I see. He should be in the room, because he is the one who has not opened his drawer either. He has a drawer of his own that he has not opened. My grandmother told me. She did not say what was in it. I do not need to know. I think that he and you should open them together. So, child, do I. I am not going to be in the room. The drawer is not, I think, mine. The tin is. The tin is. The drawer is not. I shall ask him. Today. Today. She found him in his study. She did not knock. She came in and laid the folded slip on the green leather between his hands. He read it without speaking. He looked up. You have decided. I have. He looked for a long moment at the small picture of a curtain Isolde had drawn beside her own name. Now. She had not, in the gallery, decided that it would be now. She had decided only that it would be soon. She looked at him. He was sitting at his desk in the late afternoon light. His coat was off. His hair, which he combed each morning with great precision, had got a little out of order. He looked, she thought, like a tired man who was no longer afraid of being tired. Now. Good. He rose. He went to the 2nd drawer. He took out from his waistcoat pocket on its small chain a key. He put it into the lock. The lock turned. He looked, briefly, at her. She came around the desk. He drew the drawer open. There was, in it, a small bound book of green leather, badly worn at the corners, a single envelope sealed with wax. He stood looking down into the drawer. Then he reached and took out the small bound book. He put it on the desk. He did not, that afternoon, open it past the 1st page. He had told her once that he had not been able to read it past the 1st page, and he could not, that afternoon, either. He opened it. He looked at the 1st page. He read it. He closed the book and laid his hand flat upon it. She put her hand, very lightly, over his on the cover. He looked down at the hands. After a moment, he turned his hand, palm up, beneath hers, and closed his fingers gently around hers. I have not held a hand, in this room, in 3 years. I know. He opened the drawer again. He took out the envelope. He addressed this to me. I have not opened it. Yes, I should like to read it now. I shall leave you if you wish. He shook his head. He broke the seal. He read. She did not look at the letter. She did not let go of his hand. He did not let go of hers. When he finished, he set the letter down. He did not speak for some time. Then he said, in a voice that was not quite his, "He has asked me to forgive him for not telling me, in the last weeks, what he was finding." He says he was afraid that I would forbid him to continue. He says he had begun to believe that he was close to the truth of how Aurelian died, and that he could not, in honor, set it aside merely because the man who had killed him was protected by your uncle. He has asked me to finish what he began, if I should ever come to be in a position to. He has asked me to be the kind of man who would finish it. He looked, at last, at her. I have been 3 years refusing to read this letter because I was afraid of what it would ask me. It has asked me only what I should have, by my own conscience, asked myself. You are not too late. I am late. You have not forgotten him. You have not, in 3 years, made a single decision in this house that he would have been ashamed of. The Dowager has told me. Mr. Kelbourne has told me. The work has continued. The estate has held. The household has been kept whole. You did not know what your brother was asking. You have, in the years since, been doing it. You did not know it. It does not matter. Vesper. Yes, I have not, in 3 years, been able to imagine reading any further past the first page. I find this afternoon that I can imagine it. That is enough for today. It is. He laid the small bound book back into the drawer. He folded the letter once and laid it inside the cover. He closed the book. He did not lock the drawer. He took the key from the lock and put it on the desk. He pushed it across toward her. I have carried that key for 3 years. I should be glad, on the next occasion on which the drawer is opened, if it were opened by both of us. Yes. She did not pick up the key. He understood why. I should like to walk with you in the rose garden this afternoon, before the light goes. The roses are cut back. I am aware. He took up his coat. She let him, at the door, take her hand. He did not let it go on the way down. The rose garden in the last week of November was not the place it would be in May. The beds had been cut back almost to the ground. The trellises stood bare. The frost had silvered the gravel. The light, slow and low, lay along the box hedges and made of them a silver work lovelier, in its way, than the green of any season. He led her along the central walk to the small stone bench at the far end. He stopped before it. He did not let go of her hand. Vesper. Yes. I am not a man with a great gift for the speech that this moment is held by the country to require. I have rehearsed 3. I shall not now use any of them. I shall ask you only, in the words that come to me here, what I have wished for some weeks to ask you. Yes, I should like that you should remain in this house, not as my mother's companion, not as the elder sister of the child of this household. I should like that you should remain here as my wife. A pause. I do not ask it lightly. I ask it of a woman who has had a great many things demanded of her, and who has not, until very recently, been given the standing to choose with the freedom that a person is entitled to. I should not wish to be a further matter demanded. I should wish to be, if you would have me, a matter chosen. I should wish to be the choice that you make, of your own will, after every other choice has been freed. She did not answer at once. She had not, in 12 years, allowed herself to hope for the other thing. She had been preparing, all the way down the central walk, for him to bring her to the bench and to say something else. He had not said it. Tobias. He drew a small, shaken breath at that. I have not, she said, in some years, allowed myself to imagine being asked anything of this size. I have, in the last weeks, allowed myself to imagine it. In a corner of my mind, I had not admitted I was using. I have been afraid, all the way down this walk, that you would not ask. I am, I find, more afraid now that you have, because I do not have a prepared answer. The answer. The answer is yes. He closed his eyes. When he opened them, they were the eyes of a man who had been asked a question by a brother 3 years dead, and had been late in answering, and who had, that afternoon, been given the chance to be on time for the next thing he was asked. Vesper. Yes, I shall not be a perfect husband. I shall not be a perfect wife. I shall be the husband I am able to be. I should like to try. I shall help you. I had counted on that. He drew her gently the small distance into him. He kissed her. It was the kiss of a man who had, in his life, kissed very few women, and had chosen this one with great care. It was the kiss of a woman who had not, in her life, been kissed, and had chosen, that afternoon, that the first should be him. When they drew apart, neither spoke at once. Then she said, with a small, trembling smile, "We shall have to tell your mother. She knows already. I beg your pardon." "She has known," the Duke said gravely, "since the morning after Bath. I have not known until this afternoon." "I am aware. My mother has the advantage on most of us in such matters." He gave her his arm. At the entrance to the garden, Isolde and Maggie sat on the low garden wall, very close together, in matching pinafores. They had been there, by the small, pleased composure of Isolde's face, for some time. The dowager stood on the gravel a little way behind them. Mr. Calbourne stood further off, looking very deliberately at a particular flagstone. "Well, child." "Yes." "Good. May we now call you Aunt?" Isolde said. "You may." "Aunt Vesper," Isolde said. "Aunt Vesper," Maggie said gravely. The dowager looked once at her son, and once with a gentleness she did not often show in public, at Vesper. "We shall have, I think, an early supper." They were married in the small chapel of Marchwood Hall on a bright morning in the second week of January, with snow on the south lawn and the cedars in their winter silver, and with no guests of consequence beyond the household itself, and Mr. Calbourne and Mrs. Hartington, and 3 of the dowager's particular friends. Maggie wore the pale green ribbon her friend Letty had given her, in her hair. Isolde wore a serious face and a new dress of dove-gray wool, and carried, with ferocious dignity, a small posy that Mrs. Trevenna had assembled for her at 6 in the morning. Mrs. Penhallow wept twice, and pretended both times that she was attending to the candles. Mr. Calbourne gave Vesper, in the absence of any father, brother, or uncle, his arm. "You will, I think, do, child." "I shall try, my lord." "You will do. I have known him 40 years. The Duke met her at the small altar. He was not that morning a man with a hard face. He looked like the man he should always have been, the man he had begun, very late, to be. The vicar said the words. Vesper made the responses in a clear, level voice. The Duke, who had not in any acquaintance sounded uncertain in his own house, sounded uncertain twice. The dowager did not weep at weddings. It was a discipline of 50 years. She did, however, walk forward herself on her stick, lay her thin, cold hand for a moment against Vesper's cheek, and say very softly, only to her, "Welcome home, child." Vesper had not known she had been waiting for that. She wept then, a single time, very quietly. The dowager did not chide her. The wedding breakfast was small. Around the table sat 6 people. The dowager, Mr. Calbourne, the Duke, Vesper, Isolde, Maggie. Mrs. Penhallow had declined with great civility on the grounds that an upper servant did not in principle dine in the dining hall. The dowager nodded once and sent her, by the second footman, a small private glass of the late husband's wine. The household, by 8:30, was quiet. The Duke and Vesper sat for a small while in the small drawing room, in 2 chairs by the fire, with the door open. He held her hand on the arm of his chair. They sat for nearly an hour without speaking. It was, Vesper would think years later, the most peaceful hour she had ever spent in a room with another person. In the spring of the following year, The matter of the brothers' papers came at last to the magistrate of the county in which Aurelian Aldwin had died, 12 years before. The Duke's brother had not been allowed to finish what he had begun. The Duke finished it for him. The case took most of the spring to assemble. Mr. Ferncliff traveled 3 times to the county in question. The Duke traveled once. Vesper, who would not be left at home for so weighty a matter, traveled with him. They stayed at the house of Mr. Calbourne's cousin, who had known the late Duke and had agreed at once to receive them. Mrs. Hartington's husband, a quiet country gentleman of considerable intelligence, was prevailed upon to act as their counsel before the magistrate. The man who had fired the shot, who had been a friend of Edmund Aldwin and was protected by him afterwards, had quietly died in the 2nd year of his exile abroad. He was found, by the inquiry, to have been the cause of Aurelian's death. Edmund Aldwin was found, by the inquiry, to have obstructed the original investigation by means of false testimony procured at the time. He was, by then, in France and beyond the practical reach of the court. The findings were entered into the record. The Duke's brother's name was entered into the record beside them, as the man whose private investigation had laid the ground for the inquiry. The Dowager was present in the court for the reading of the findings. She wore her best mourning, although she was not in mourning. She inclined her head once to the magistrate at the close. She did not speak. She walked out on Vesper's arm. Outside the courthouse, in the spring sunshine, she said quietly, only to Vesper, "He is finished now." "My younger boy, he's finished, yes." Vesper did not weep on her aunt that day. She wept later, in private. The Dowager did not weep at courthouses, any more than she wept at weddings. The west wing of Marchwood Hall was opened on a Saturday in May, by the Duke and the Dowager and Vesper, together, with no one else in the house. They opened it slowly. They did not, that morning, do anything in it, but walk it and sit in it for nearly an hour in the small library at the western end. They opened the windows. They let out the air. They came back in the early summer, with Mrs. Penhallow and 3 maids, and they aired the rooms. By the autumn of the 2nd year, the rooms had become, by quiet stages, a part of the house again. The room that had been Adrian's became, by Vesper's own choice, a small private sitting room for herself and Isolde and Maggie, in which the 3 of them could be private together when they wished. The drawer in the Duke's study was opened, 2nd, in the late spring, by the Duke and Vesper together. The small bound book was, in the slow course of the next 6 weeks, read in full by both of them. It was not in the end the unbearable thing the Duke had feared. It was the book of a young man who had been gathering, with great patience, the truth of how a friend of his Oxford years had died. The friend had been Aurelian Aldwin. He had been killed in a duel that should never have been fought, by a man who was protected afterwards by the dead man's own father. Adrian had not said, in 3 years, that he had been investigating his friend's death because he had not been certain enough of his findings to bring them forward. He had, by the time of his own death of fever, been close. He had not been finished. The Duke finished it. Vesper read the book at his side. She read it aloud to him in the evenings, in the small drawing room, after Isolde and Maggie had gone up. At the end of it, the Duke laid the book down and said, very quietly, "He was a good young man, my brother. He should be remembered as one. He shall be." He kissed her that evening, with the drawer in his study at last empty of secrets. In the autumn of the 2nd year of their marriage, a small new presence arrived in Marchwood Hall, who was by Mrs. Trevenna's account a very small person of considerable opinion, and whose name was, by the Dowager's choice, and Vesper's quiet agreement, and the Duke's full assent, Adrian Margaret Ravenholt. The choice of the second name had been a matter of some consideration. The dowager had suggested, very gravely, that it might honor both their mothers, who had, by an unlikely turn, shared a Christian name. The Duke had agreed at once. Vesper had wept briefly, and had also agreed. The choice of the first name had not, in the end, required discussion. It had been waiting in that house for 3 years to be spoken, without grief. Isolde, when told, had nodded once, and had said only, gravely, "He must, of course, have his own seat in the gallery in due course. We shall arrange it." He did, in due course, have his own seat. The dowager died in the spring of the 7th year of her son's marriage, in her own bed, at 74, with Vesper on one side of her and Maggie, who was by then 16, on the other, and her granddaughter Isolde, who was 17, sitting at the foot of the bed. The Duke had been with her until an hour before. He had stepped out at her insistence to look in upon his small son, who was unwell with a fever in the next room. He had not, in the end, been with her at the moment, and had grieved for that briefly, and had then forgiven himself, with Vesper's help, on the grounds that the dowager had been the one who had sent him out, and that the dowager in such matters had always been right. She left, by her will, the small ornate box of letters from women she had helped over 37 years, to Vesper. She left her ledger, and the second ledger, to Vesper as well. She left a small private letter to Isolde, of which the contents were never discussed publicly. She left the late Duke's snuff box to Mr. Calburn. She left a small annuity to Mrs. Penhallow. She left, particularly, to Mrs. Trevenna, the right to use in the kitchen of Marchwood Hall for the rest of Mrs. Trevenna's life, the small silver salt cellar that had been her grandmother's. She left the long gallery by a small added clause that had no force in law, and that the family kept anyway, to her granddaughter Isolde. Vesper sat, on the evening after the funeral, in the long gallery, in the window seat behind the overlong curtain, with Maggie on one side of her and Isolde on the other. They sat there for nearly an hour without speaking. The light moved along the gallery, as it had moved on the afternoon she had first sat in that seat. Maggie said after a long time, "We are not, all of us, in the room." Vesper looked down at her. Maggie was 16 by then. She had her mother's mouth still. "She is in the room," Maggie said in a small, careful voice. "Grandmama is in the room. She has only stepped out. She does that sometimes when we are sitting together. She does not wish to be the one talking. She steps out." "Yes, so she does." Isolde, on the other side of her, said nothing. Isolde had wept already in private. She did, however, very quietly, lay her head against Vesper's shoulder in the manner she had not done for nearly 7 years. "Aunt Vesper?" "Yes, she's in the room. She is." A pause. "We shall," Isolde said. "Manage. We shall." A long quiet. Down in his study, the Duke sat at his desk with the second drawer open and a small new piece of paper laid on top of the small bound book. The new piece of paper was a letter he had written that afternoon, after the funeral, to no living person. He had addressed it to his brother. He had told his brother in 3 short paragraphs what their mother had been at the end, and that she had not been afraid, and that she had said almost the last thing very clearly, his name and Vesper's name, and that she had said with the particular dry humor she had carried into her death, the way other women carried prayer books, that she had been wrong, and that the right person had, in the end, come through the right door, and that her son was, in the end, a man she was content to leave the house to. He folded the letter. He laid it inside the cover of the book. He closed the book. He left it in the drawer. He did not lock the drawer. He had not locked it in nearly 7 years. He rose. He went up the back stair. He went past the door of the dowager's apartments, which would in due course become the rooms of his own son. He went up to the long gallery. He drew the curtain back. his wife, his sister-in-law, his niece, sat in the window seat together, in the silver light of an evening in late spring. They turned at the curtain. Room for a fourth. There is. He sat. They sat, the four of them, for some time without speaking. Maggie leaned, after a while, against Isolde. Isolde leaned, after a while, against Vesper. Vesper, after a while, leaned very lightly against the Duke, who put his arm along the back of the seat behind her shoulders, as he had not in any acquaintance done in a public place, but who had at last come to understand that there were in his own house, in his own gallery, in his own life, places that were not public. The light went at last. Mrs. Penhallow, far below, came up the back stair very quietly, looked into the gallery, withdrew without making a sound, and arranged downstairs in the small dining room a supper of cold meats and bread and a single bottle of the late husband's wine. In the long gallery above, 4 people sat for a little while longer. When at last they rose, it was Isolde who rose first, and gave her hand to Maggie, who gave her hand to Vesper, who gave her hand to the Duke. At the head of the stair, Isolde paused and turned and looked back. The seat was empty. The curtain was drawn back. The cushion was a little hollow in the middle, as it always was, from the long use of the women of that house. "Good night, Grandmama." She did not say it loudly. She did not say it for anyone in particular. She said it in the small, exact voice in which she had, at 9, behind a curtain, told her aunt that she had been crying. Then she went down. Maggie went down after her. Vesper, on the Duke's arm, paused a moment. She turned and looked, herself, the length of the gallery. She had been very lately late, herself, in believing in some things. She had been lately late in believing that she would last in this house. She had been lately late in believing that she had been wanted in it. She had been lately late in believing that the right person could come through the wrong door. She was no longer in any of those matters late. "Good night, Your Grace," she said, without turning. "Good night, child," said the long gallery in the voice it had always had. She went down on her husband's arm to supper. If, in this story, you have heard a thing you needed to hear, then this story has done what it was sent to do. That a young woman delivered as a debt may yet, by the steady use of her own dignity and the keeping of the company of those who have chosen her, become the keeper of a house. That a man who has closed a wing of his life may yet, in the keeping of the right company, find the courage to open the drawer he has not opened. That a child kept apart from her family by the small cruelties of a small man may yet be sent for, fetched, and taken into the gallery of the people who were always going to love her. That the right person, at the right time, may yet come through the wrong door, and may be welcomed, and may, in the end, become the door itself. Thank you for sitting in the gallery a while, with the curtain drawn back, in the silver light of an evening that the house has agreed, this once, to let you share. Until the next story finds us, good night.